Dan's survival. Hello everyone, Dan here, and I'm doing an updated Resident Evil tier list for the games, 2020 edition. I did one of these last year pre-RE3 Remake, and I figured it was time to update it. I'm definitely not somebody that believes your viewpoint on, well, pretty much anything, but especially something like a video game, needs to stay the same. It can grow, it can change, you can start to like something better, you can start to like something worse. And it's something I've done a lot over my Resident Evil lifetime. I've had a lot of moments like that where I feel exactly that thing. So I figured it was a good idea to go ahead and just kind of do this update and see where everything stands. Again, the link for the original will be in the comments, and it'll stick around in the collection, and maybe we'll make this like an annual thing. You know, like maybe next year we'll add Resident Evil 8 and take a reevaluation, because over on my Twitch channel, I play these games pretty much all the time. I mean, you know, there's other stuff, of course, in there too, but it's my favorite series, and it's what I spend a lot of time on. Very fitting that I say it's my favorite series, and there's a whole bunch of games actually in it I haven't played. So those that I've already separated apart, Gaiden, Dead Aim, Outbreak 2, the rail shooters on the Wii, Deadly Silence, 3D Mercenaries, Umbrella Corps, and Resistance. So we're going to go through these in something of a chronological order. Again, these are just my opinions. If you don't like them, that's totally fine. You know, we're all entitled to our own opinions. Just be nice about it, is all I ever ask. So let's get this started off with Resident Evil 0. It's probably no mystery to a lot of people that know me that this is far from one of my favorites. I think the setting, atmosphere, everything like that is spot on in this game. It is terrific. The train especially is one of the best set pieces I think Resident Evil has done. It's excellent. However, it's about where my praise ends with this game. I think it has among the weakest leads in the series. I think Rebecca's a little too doe-eyed, even though that's kind of the point, but I just never found her very compelling. Billy, I think, is just very unappealing as well. I think it has some of the worst bosses, namely the Giant Bat. The rest are fine enough, but they're kind of just mid-level at best. The minor enemies, namely the Leechmen and Eliminators, are frustrating to deal with more than fun to deal with. And how could we forget the hookshot? Everybody loves the hookshot. The drop mechanics, the inventory management just as a whole is not it's just not fun to deal with. Even knowing what to do, you know, without the help of a guide or anything, just being able to even quote-unquote speedrun it, it's just a very cumbersome video game to play that I honestly don't have much fun with. Another upside is I do enjoy the somewhat inconsistencies, but still good scenes with Birkin and Wesker that I say inconsistencies in the fact that they kind of are accurate to the lore, kind of not, kind of fitting for just to squeeze that game in. But yeah, as a whole, the game isn't terrible. It isn't a complete failure, but it grades low on the Resident Evil scale in the sense that it just has too much frustration to playing it. As opposed to the original, the classic. I think this is a game that has... This game and some others have improved a lot over the year for me. Mainly because I started speedrunning the Jill 100% route. And I know the voice acting's bad. It's terrible. And I don't want to sound like an over defender with this, but... You know, the time capsule quality of it, though, where everybody knows about it. It's almost famously bad. So bad that it can almost be considered charming. And the game plays well. It handles well. It's fun to play. I can't stress that enough. I feel like that's a lost thing in a lot of assessment processes of video games. Is it just fun? Does it handle well? And for 1996 tank controls, I think it handles pretty damn well. Especially if you play it when you can set it to where it'll auto-aim for you, like in Resident Evil 2 and 3. And, it's just an exceptional video game. I always have fun playing it, whether I'm playing as Jill or Chris. And, it's a good time. It's one of the best the series has to offer still to this day. But it is topped, and it is buried a bit by its remake. The remake of Resident Evil 1 is, to me, the greatest survival horror game ever made. I apologize, Silent Hill fans, that's just my take on it. But the inclusion of defense items, the tragic Lisa Trevor story, which actually, in my opinion, is the best part of the entire game, and it's new. The aesthetic, the sound design, every little detail they added to it, taking things from the original and just tweaking and morphing them in this beautifully inspired way to create what is an amazing experience. One of the greatest games ever made, not only for Resident Evil just in general, but to me, like I said, the best survival horror game out there. A masterpiece of a title, and the greatest remake ever done. Now, another heavy hitter is the classic OG RE2. This was my first game in Resident Evil, and it definitely has a nostalgic place, but it's also just a damn good game. That nostalgia can drive it so far, but its greatness is what keeps it at the top rank here. The 4 scenarios and the way the A and the B scenarios tie in and work so well together, regardless of if you're starting as Leon or starting as Claire, it really, really pays off. Mr. X is a very fun jump scare trigger machine. He gets some great ones, but he's very well just drip drop into the game. I think is a much more effective placement and usage of him. The game has its solid but cheesy voice acting. It's still at that cheese point, and some wonderfully over-the-top, almost laughable, dramatic scenes towards the end. But they play as drama, and we can accept them as drama, or I can anyway. But I can also still laugh. It's like I can walk both sides of the line with it, and I really, really love that aspect of it. It is just an exceptional game. It is the game that put this series on the map, and to me, it is still every bit as fun to play today as it was back in 98 when I played it originally. A true masterpiece. The remake of 2. This is a game that's getting a bit of a boost for me. I had it as a B, I believe, on the last list, and I finally started to take an honest look at this game. My biggest issue, and I really hated the fact that I did this, was the fact that I was so worried about what this game wasn't versus what it actually is. This game is an exceptional remake, redesigning the police station the way they did. I wasn't the biggest fan of the sewers, but the labs were excellent as well. And the bosses, the voice acting, the music are all so well done. And I couldn't get past the second scenario situation and not having the intertwining storylines for a while, especially the fact that Mr. X will actually die in Claire's first campaign and then he'll still be alive in Leon's second as the final boss. That was always something that irked me, but I kind of made my peace with it and just started really looking at the game itself, and it's very, very fun to play. It is such a good game. It really is. And I don't think it's quite as good as some of the others we've already talked about, But it is just, it's an excellent, really rock-solid game. And they did a good job with it. They really did. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can say on it. Yeah, let's move on. Resident Evil 3 Classic. Another game getting a bit of a boost. I usually had this at the A tier, but this has been a big 2020 game for me. I learned how to play this game much better, and I started to play it more frequently. For the longest time, I had only played this game once when it came out, and then it wasn't until Twitch that I actually picked it up and played it again, where I thought it was good, I thought it was cool, but I didn't see much reason to go back to it. And I started to kind of learn the light speedrun of it. Not really true speedrun, but how to get through it quickly enough. And it allowed me to start experiencing more of the RNG factors of the game that opened up so many replayable pathways through the game that I really, really started to appreciate and enjoy. And I don't think in the 90s I gave a true appreciation either to how well done Nemesis is. That is an exceptional piece of gaming right there. To make Nemesis work the way they did so well deserves more credit than it feels like it may have gotten. And maybe it did, and I just don't remember. But yes, is it a short game? Is it only one scenario? Yep. Is it a great game, though? Yes. I feel I can say that now, and it's the first time I would put it at that S tier. Right beside RE2. I would still say, by the way, the rankings here, I am putting them in order of how I would rank them. So like RE2 Remake is 5th right now, so on and so forth. This is 1st, 2nd, 3rd. But it stands tall with the best of the series for me. And I feel glad too, because it's a game that a lot of people I know love. It is I've heard it called a favorite by a ton of folks. And I feel like I finally get it to that level. But yes, this 2020 has been great for my experience with this title. As for its remake, not quite as much. Now, its remake it's not as bad as it's often made out to be. I truly do believe that. And this isn't an issue, again, I was sure to remove the idea of not focusing on what it doesn't have and just focusing squarely on what it is. What it is it's a beautiful game. I think Nemesis looks and sounds pretty cool. I like the characters. I think Mikhail and Nikolai especially get a nice boost. I think Carlos gets a nice boost. Jill's about even, maybe a little worse, but still very solid. All the characters are good. The music is pretty solid. The game plays well enough. I think the dodge mechanic, while it's a little flaky with how some of the RNG of the game will work, and the fact that it has a weird DA system to it, is not bad. I think it could have been a little tighter. Stuff like the Hunter Gammas are well done. I like that change. They have their own identity now. Although their tail whip is still BS, but that's beside the point. I like the fact that we got to see more of Carlos. We got to see that Brad was the zombie that bit Marvin. I thought that was a cool little loop. I still feel bad for Marvin. But anyway, it's, all that is good stuff. The problem is, this game has virtually no puzzles. It feels on rails to the extent that even a casual playthrough, I think my first playthrough took me 4 hours, and I took my time looking around. And it also just feels like, with the exception of 2 moments, Nemesis is just a set-piece generator. Now, I wasn't a fan of the way Mr. X was in Resident Evil 2. I thought he bordered on more annoying than actually compelling. But at the same point, I was glad Nemesis didn't bug me to that extent, but I almost wish... I could have, I don't know, engaged with him more. Because what we're left with is where he's this superpower being that we deal with, maybe we can deal with him like 3 times, I think, at the minimum, if we take the route right. And then all the fights, while he looks cool in those fights, they devolve into these stage set piece fights where, like, he will, for no reason beyond just to give you a reason to kill him, he'll suddenly stop trying to kill you and run around the top of a stage and let you blow him up and knock him down. Or he'll go and hide by a tank of acid and let you shoot it. He sets himself up to die more than you actively killing him. Now, you do shoot him and he'll fight you on the ground afterwards, but the point is, the fights just feel too staged. And it's all of them. I think the best one is probably the one with the flamethrower in the first run-in with him. That's probably my favorite one against them. And the problem is they just don't feel fun. If you're going to do a set-piece thing, like an Uncharted type thing, let's say, you know, like you're getting drugged behind the truck in Uncharted 4. Is it scripted as hell? Of course it is. Is it goofy even? Yeah. But it's well done and it's fun, and Resident Evil 3 doesn't even accomplish that. That is the biggest problem of the game. And then they pad the game out the short length by giving weird sequences where we have to protect Jill in the hospital. That takes way too long, and it just... so many moments like that just feel like the game's getting in its own way, because they didn't want to fully realize it the way they did too. And again, I'm not trying to focus on it not having stuff like the clock tower, but it needed stuff like the clock tower. It's not the fact that it could have been just a different building altogether. It could have been the newspaper building. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Just give us more. Give us stuff to do, you know, that'll be engaging, as opposed to just stuff that feels like uninspired filler. So again, I don't want to say I totally hate the game, though. I do give it a C. I like it better than 0. It's just the game could have been better, and while there is a lot of good qualities to it, the negatives just outweigh it, which is a shame, especially because I had played so much RE3 Classic prior to it, and obviously I just talked about moving it up. It did get me to the point I was really ready for it, and I admit, I had fun my first playthrough, but ever since that first playthrough, I've done, I think, 5 playthroughs of it total now. I just feel like, I went from probably like, it was here, now it's here, and now it's all the way dropped down to here. And I just don't see it recovering. But you never know, I guess. You know, this stuff's crazy sometimes. You know, maybe... I don't see it going up any. Maybe it'll kind of just stay fixed here for a while. We'll see, but... yeah, unfortunately, C rank for Resident Evil 3 Remake. Resident Evil Survivor. Yes. Okay. Now, let me say this. Survivor is a short, dumb, bad video game. It is very funny at times because of how bad it is. And, you know, for what it's actually trying to do, it's not the worst thing in the world. Yeah, you know, it's an interesting thing where it's, it could have been even worse, I guess is what I'm saying, but it's not very good. I don't find it all that great. It's a great meme game, I suppose, you know, you could say, but, I did like the fact that they gave an explanation of where the tyrants came from, and stuff like that, but, you know, let's be real, it's just a cash grab game they wanted to throw out with the Resident Evil game name on it. You know, it could have been worse. It's not disappointing to me because, I don't know, I think even when I was a kid looking at this game, I had an idea of that it was not going to be very good, but it was just going to be a goofy, fun time, you know, and the weird cat crying deaths of some of the enemies and all the, just a very weird game. But yeah, anyway, it's not very good, but it's good for a laugh, I can say that much. So I always recommend people give it at least once or watch a playthrough of it. So here's our first example of a game that's dropped down a bit for me. It's Code Veronica. Now, I put a Code Veronica, I think, in the A list. I think I had it right after RE3 Classic on the original list I did. And this isn't to say necessarily that Alright, well, let's just focus... Alright, the good stuff first. I really love Wesker in this game. He doesn't have a ton of screen time, but every bit he's in, he is great in. The fight scene with him and Alexia is one of the signature moments of the series, I would say. I think this game as a whole has the best soundtrack of any game in the series. I like Claire. I really like Chris. Steve is pure garbage, but he's fun as hell to make fun of. But the bosses are weak, I would say. I think the only boss I found... I like the idea of the Nosferatu boss more than I like actually dealing with it. The execution did not match the aspirations there, but, you know, above all, the biggest... So the good is the good. It's good qualities are very high, and it's a very solid, well-done, classic feel Resident Evil in regards to how it plays and functions overall. My issue with this game that kind of just started to gnaw at me a little bit more and more, and did start to finally make me say, I'm going to start to move it down a little bit, is the backtracking in the game is terrible. There is so much backtracking, even by Resident Evil standards. I actually tried the 12-hour challenge to learn the speedrun of Code Veronica, and the game, even played optimally, is still a backtracking nightmare. And it's just... I don't know, it gets to a point where I just get tired of seeing the stuff. The enemies respawn too, and they got the Bandersnatches, which are exceptionally annoying. It becomes a hassle, and it's kind of just... It didn't bug me so much, but it just has... It's started to more now. You know, that, and again, it's kind of a reassessment of things. And then you'll do all this stuff a couple times with Claire, then you go back to the same areas with Chris later, and it's just... It all just builds on itself to where, you know, I've kind of at a point where I think it's just worse than these other games. Really, is above all. It's still a fine game. It's still a game I'll play a lot. But, you know, we've kind of reevaluated it to probably where it more belongs, I would say. Resident Evil Outbreak. Okay, now, Outbreak is getting a bad grade for me, because let me clarify this. My experience with Resident Evil Outbreak is playing it last year, or maybe the year before, I can't remember. I played it solo, PlayStation 2. And I honestly thought the game was terrible. There was one segment that I thought was okay. The rest I thought were tedious to get through. I thought the AI was annoying as hell, and not very good. Now, I've been told plenty that this game is excellent if you play it online with folks, which you can do through various means. See, to me, for one, my experience cannot be that. And it wasn't. But to me, if you need that big of a qualifier to make your game go from being that bad to as good as some people make it out to be. Some people love this game. I wish I saw it. You know, I kind of talked about that with 3, where I'm glad I had a bit of the realization that it goes from being really good to great. I don't see how it gets there with Outbreak. I wish I did, though, but I cannot get into this game for the life of me. And it's a shame. It's a shame, but But yeah, so that's kind of where it sits for me. It wasn't very fun to play, and I honestly have no desire to go back to it at this current time. So, we'll see though. You never know. Resident Evil 4. Now, anybody that knows me, I've always called it. I've been very consistent to say Resident Evil 4 is my favorite video game of all time. Now, you may be thinking, well, you said Resident Evil Remake is your favorite survival horror game, and it is. I think it's the best survival horror game ever made. This is an action horror game. And there's always the debate about Resident Evil 4. Did it kill the series? Did it steer it the wrong path? Yeah, technically, but it also saved the series that this selling like garbage almost caused. It's easy to blame it for its end results, which we'll talk about a little later, but it's without mentioning all the good it did. It is an exceptional video game. When it came out, it was so far ahead of everything else, and even 15 years later, it's still so much more ambitious than most anything you're going to find out there today. The controls have aged a bit. They're still in the tank style, but I think the game can be picked up and played, and the controls can be learned in 15-20 minutes if it's somebody really aiming to do so. It's the boss fights. I think it is the best boss lineup by far in the series, but it's among the best in video games. Great variety of weapons you can choose from and utilize. I think the enemies are very cool. The story is fine. I think Ashley's burdensome side is way insanely overrated, because I think everybody that complains about Ashley seems to forget the fact that she's only in maybe 30% of the game. Maybe not even that much. I've never actually counted it out. But you notice the game removes her from Leon's side a lot. She's really not that bad. You focus on the few times when she's screaming and everything, and, had that sweep over an entire 12, 15-hour game, whatever it takes you to play it. And I think that's a little misinformed. Maybe not the best approach. That's just me. And, but yeah, just an exceptional video game. It struck the right notes every step of the way for me. I think Leon is at the character's best. He's that perfect action hero mode. Ada is the femme fatale Catwoman to his Batman perfectly. Sadler is not among the best of the main villains, but he's good. Krauser is great, though, and just every step of the way the game really hits. I love it. I think it is my favorite game. Now Revelations is not one of my favorite games. I've never been much of a Revelations fan. I like the Jill segments well enough. I think she's pretty decent in the game. The gameplay is a little rough, and I understand it is a DS game coming over to... I played it on the PlayStation 4. I understand there were limitations there, but it just wasn't a very fun game to interact and play through. I don't know, I thought the enemies were fine enough. The puzzles were fine. Actually, the puzzles weren't bad. The scan mechanic, I was tired of it after the first couple chapters, honestly. The side characters are terrible. They are the worst in the series. Oh my goodness, Jackass and Grinder, I'm so glad we've never seen them again. Jill is fine though, Chris is fine, and I don't know, I've never seen the hype around this game. I think this game is valued higher because it is more of a horror game that came out in the era of action, and thus it is given bonus points for that more than its actual quality. But yeah, I just don't think it's a very good game overall. Now, Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 5's taken a bit of hit. I still put it as a B, but I've really been evaluating this game a lot, as it's a game that I often get asked about speedruns for, and various things like that, and let me first say I am including the DLCs in my evaluation of these games. So 5 is one of those. I think the Desperate Escape and then the one where he plays Jill and Chris are factored into this as well. So that does give them a little bit of a bump. But overall, Resident Evil 5, I won't say it requires a co-op partner, but it does face the burden of a bad AI if you don't have one. And I've really come to miss the main villains in that game. And what I mean is, after you kill Irving, that stretch from the end of Irving to Wesker showing up towards the end is very bleak, very bland to me. I don't know. I don't feel as engaged as I wish I was, as I used to be. I just think this has gone from a game that is still a great co-op game to being an alright experience solo. That it probably, if you're taking just this solo, it's a C. I put it up here because the co-op factor is still very, very high, and it is very, very well done. There aren't many games on its level as far as just being a co-op third-person action horror shooter, whatever you want to break it down as. There's just not much that can run with it there. But Sheva is a total throwaway character. I mean, she's got some good scenes with Chris, but I noticed she was not going to be a long-term character when Wesker never once actually acknowledges her, which is kind of weird. He never even mentions the idea that he's going to kill them both. He's just going to kill Chris. I mean, the game is, of course, goofy. It's way over the top. The boulder punch, people never shut up about that. It's, it's a weird game. It's a good game. Solid game. But it is sort of trending down for me. And again, if it wasn't for the fact that the co-op works so well, I'd put it a notch lower. I have to say, I mean, we'll get to 6 here in a minute, but it's closer to 6 than it is to 4 now for me. Or it's closer to 6 than it even is to, I don't know, Remake 2. It's trending the wrong way for me, but again, reassessing. Alright, up next we got Operation Raccoon City, which is bad. Yeah, I mean, what do we really need to say about this game? It's bad, we all know it's bad. I mean, what more can I say? I don't know, like, I haven't played this game in a long time, though, I will admit, so maybe I'm forgetting some things, but I don't feel like I'm missing much or forgetting much. I just remember despising this game overall when it came out, and, yeah, not having much inspiration to go back. Revelations 2, I give it a solid D. Much like Revelations 1, I think this game gets a little bit more pop for being a horror game in the era of action. It released right around 5 and 6, and it was the scary game to to kind of level it out. The problem is, Revelations 2 is maybe the most boring game in the series. It had too little content to be designed the way it was. What they should have done is had to be just 4 episodes where 2 were Barry and 2 were Claire, and that'd be it, instead of having each of them have 4. But the game was just, I just don't think it's very good. It handles well. I think Barry is cool in it. Claire is okay. Moira's okay. Natalia, the angle of Natalia and Alex Wesker, I think is pretty good. I actually would like to see maybe that pop up in Resident Evil 8, and or any number of things there. I think that all works well. And the game's just boring. You revisit areas again. I mean, yeah, it's different time frames, different enemies, but I don't know. I often just didn't have fun. Like, I always just think back to things like Barry doing the crane puzzle or Barry doing the metal box puzzle, and overall, like, they turned menial tasks that were, I don't know, 5-minute things into, like, making up a core portion of their chapters, it felt like. Maybe I'm overstating that a bit, but bottom line is, I just don't have very much fun playing the game. I think it's slow and tedious. Bottom line. Again, probably a little bit of an unpopular pick, but it's mine. Resident Evil 6, right there at the C. I think 6 is on the underrated side, but it also is definitely flawed in very, very, very many ways. I think the Ada, Leon, and Jake campaigns are far better than the Chris. The Chris campaign is bad. The Chris campaign would have it down in this DF area if it was just it. You know, the Simmons fights get memed on big time, and Simmons deserves to get memed on because he's a terrible villain. The graphics are quite good, though. I think the Ustanak villain is quite cool. Is it way over the top to an extreme? Yes. Is it a good co-op action game, though? I think it is. I think it is. It's got some annoying mechanics, like some knockdown things. But if you just sit there with a friend and you know what you're getting into, you focus on the fact of what this game is, not what it isn't. It's not scary or anything like that. But if you just can accept that and play it, I think it has a level of quality. I'm not trying to defend this game too much, because it has a lot of frustrating mechanics. The Chris, like I said, campaign is terrible. I would almost make the case, though, that 6's greatest fault is the fact that it was too ambitious. I would say 6 is maybe the most ambitious game in the series, in the fact that it's trying to be too many things under one hat. Like, the way every campaign is structured so differently, and they're all pretty hefty in length, it gets to the point that I think the game was just too big for its own shoes, if you will, or whatever expression you want to use. And that created most of its problems, where nothing within it was refined as an issue as a result of that, and it became kind of what it was. But this is not an issue of Capcom not trying. Resident Evil 3 Remake is that issue. This is not. 6 at least deserves points for effort. You know, whether it worked or not is the after effect of that, but they sure as hell at least went for it. You know, but it's, but yeah, you know, that's, I always have fun when I play it. I play it once a year typically with my buddy Hollow Julian usually, and we always have fun with it. It's yeah, I think that's a good place for it. I enjoy my time more than I do with any of these three. And yeah. Last but not least, most definitely not least, is Resident Evil 7. If you follow the YouTube channel or me on Twitch, you'll notice this has been a big game for me here in the, let's say last 3/4 of 2020, and it'll go on probably up till the release of RE8, of Resident Evil 7. Now, 7 has gotten a boost for me for a number of reasons. It was a B, but it's gotten a boost for me because I discovered the joy of Madhouse. Madhouse is the best way to play Resident Evil 7, without a doubt. Is it relentless? Yes. Is it bullshit frustrating? You better believe it. But it is so fun. The gameplay is great. I think the villains are terrific. I think the molded get a bad rap. Could there be more enemies? Well, we'll address that in a moment. But I think this game on Madhouse is where it shines. And if you play it on normal or easy, for one, the game just, I would say, is not challenging enough. But you don't get to see it in its fully appreciated as well, because you don't get the grenade launcher early, for example, and you don't get separating agents and all the cool item management you can do. And it sounds weird to put that as such a high point, but it's something I enjoy in these games. I love the item management side of these games. It's part of the survival of survival horror. I enjoy that a lot, and it's an excellent game. And I also do include the DLC, like I said with 5, into my evaluating as well, and it has some of the best DLC in gaming, with Not a Hero, Daughters, and especially End of Zoe, which is, as far as I'm concerned, maybe the best piece of DLC there is out there. Now, that's a limited window, so bear with me on saying that. I haven't played a bunch of them, but I love that DLC. All of them are good, but End of Zoe is great. It is ridiculously fun. So, and I think RE7 gets credit for that, because it's like, well, it wasn't included in the base game, but for one, this is my list, so I can do it how I want. But secondly, I bought the gold edition of the game, so I got it for free. It was with the game when I bought it, you know? So anyway, it comes to the issue of enemy variety. Now there's obviously the bakers, but then if you start to add in the DLCs, it gets to be where there's quite a few types of enemies. And to me, the molded are better than the zombies for sure. But I would say they actually are probably pretty on par with the Los Plagas. I don't know. I think they are. I think they're sinister. They're dangerous. Again, playing on Madhouse, you can appreciate that side of it. And I think they're fine. There are bees in it. There's the cool regenerating molded in the Not a Hero DLC. And then, there's the cool double-bladed ones from End of Zoe. I think they're fine. I think the game is really solid, and I think it's laid some great groundwork for RE8 to build on. Aspects of the story that we still don't know about yet are kind of frustrating, for sure, but I think we're going to be able to enjoy all of that more going forward. Like, we'll look back at 7 after playing 8 and appreciate aspects of it more, is what I'm trying to say. That's my hope, anyway. You know, that part we don't know. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I stand now as of, what is today? 11/11/2020. This is kind of how I would grade out Resident Evils. This top 3 has been the same since I played them. It has never wavered. These 3 have been in the same order. But yeah, so I would go, if I were to rank my top 10, it would go RE4, Remake 1, Classic 2, Classic 3, Classic 1, 7, Remake 2, Code Veronica, 5, Remake 3 would be the top 10. So, and then, you can kind of go from there. But, yeah, so, I mean, is my list anything like yours? Let me know. If it's not, that's fine. Be nice, though, if it isn't. If you guys want a lot of Resident Evil content, be sure to check me out on Twitch or subscribe here on YouTube. Both named Dan's_survival, where we got a lot of this content. I love, right now, a lot of RE7 content is pouring in. I've been doing a lot of speedruns of it. And we're going to keep going. We're doing Madhouse 100% right now. A lot of that. So be sure to check those out. I do a lot of casual playthroughs of all these games, though, especially that top 10 group, I would say. So if you like those, you want to talk RE, be sure to stop in. I'd love to have you. And, but yeah, I guess that's all I got. This is my final list. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Yeah, there we go. Have a good one.